This week we've been spending a lot of time around the space talking about role-playing in various aspects. One of the things that people have been asking for a long time around here is to start up a tabletop series where people can play Dungeons and Dragons. It's something that I've known about forever. It's been kind of like the classical geek stereotype tabletop game forever.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've never played it in my entire life. And just recently we've had many people asking to start playing it around the space. So just about 2 weeks ago, we held the first Dungeons and Dragons night at the space, which was an experience for me to say the least, in the sense that I'd never played any of these tabletop kind of games before, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. I mean, I'd heard all the jokes and seen all the things on TV that they've been making fun of the geeky nerds in their basements playing this game.
Community has a really great episode about D&D. I thought it was really funny if you haven't seen that.
I think I saw the second one. They said they did a second one. I saw an episode, and they had said that they were doing it again, and I was like, so it was kind of out of context for me.
Damn.
But I saw that they would kind of what they had done with it, and they took it pretty far, so it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It also had Mike from Breaking Bad, which I don't even know what his name in that show is, but it doesn't matter because it'll always be Mike from Breaking Bad because he's awesome.
Right. Yeah, no, because he's just like, he is the character he is. Well, let's move on. He's good in that show.
So good. So anyway, I had never played any of these games before, and so we sat down to kind of start going through the book and create some characters, and everybody that I'm playing with had played it before, so they kind of knew what they were getting into, and they kind of started filling out these character sheets and everything, and I was kind of leafing through this tome of a rule book.
Oh man, it's pretty cryptic. It's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information, but the thing that immediately struck me was almost everything that I was reading in the rule book, I can instantly draw corollaries to pretty much any role-playing video game I'd played my entire life.
Wow, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that really floors me about D&D is like I feel like every RPG is just an extension of that rule set, even if not directly, then they're pulling from a game that pulled from it, and a lot of combat systems, I mean, in general, are just dice rolls. I mean, even outside of RPGs, you just have that's just seems to be a really great way to have a user deal damage, and yeah, I mean, yeah, D&D really has such a huge impact on games, and it's so.
I mean, even we spent last podcast talking a lot about Fallout 4 and how I had just gotten it and started playing through it, and I built my character in my kind of standard build set. I've kind of got a character that I seem to replay a lot in multiple worlds of role-playing games. So I kind of build my standard
build. You just kind of stick with.
Well, there's a kind of type of character that I always kind of seem to gravitate towards as my main.
Yeah.
John was calling it a glass cannon the other day, which a term that I hadn't heard before. But people that get in these role-playing games, they would probably know exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's definitely. I know exactly what he means. Yep.
So I mean, I have a tendency to play like very high intelligence, low strength, low like endurance type characters, but that are smart and can do like a lot of damage really fast if they get the drop on people.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's a pretty successful way to play a lot of these games, I find. I mean, it plays to kind of the way that I play them. I don't have a tendency to just charge into combat blasting. I kind of scope the scene and pick what I want to do, and then kind of try to think my way through the combat, as opposed to just reacting like quick twitch swinging baseball bats with barbed wire on them.
Just like stand
more just like kind of creep into the corner with a revolver and blow everybody's heads off before they know I'm even there.
It's what's interesting about D&D, and I've found over time in playing these games, is I do think that to play a character some people are just really good with numbers and stats and stuff. I think for most people there's definitely like a correlation between like your personality as a person in life and the class that you would probably do the best with in a game. So like I think that playstyle, knowing what I know about you, is fairly consistent with like sort of you're a very decisive person, right? So like I think when you kind of know pretty quickly what you want to do, and once you know like you're right, you just fucking do it. Like that, like when you play D&D and you're just like, I'm running into the town, like I'm gonna go, like I know what I want to do, I'm doing this and I'm doing it right now. And so I think that character works really well for you. And like for me, like as you've seen around in my work and stuff, I like to do a lot of different things, and like, you know, I like to 3D print, I like Arduino, I like game design, I like programming, I like art.
Sure.
So like I play typically like druid like characters, and that's what I'm playing in right now.
More like a generalist.
Right, somebody that can do a little bit of everything, because to me a really important thing in my life and in any game is flexibility. Like I want to be able to do everything.
Right.
And that means the trade-off is always like I can't do it as well. You know, like I couldn't deal damage as well as you could.
You can't go deep into one
when
category. When
exactly.
You spread it out.
But like if our tank dies, I can pick up the slack. If our healer goes down, I can kind of fudge it until we get back on our feet. And I really like being able to do all that stuff.
I was just talking to another buddy of mine, and I was asking him, like how he built his Fallout character, because I was telling him, I kind of made my typical hacker gunslinger again. You know, how did you make this guy? And he's like, I don't know, whatever. I'm like, what do you mean whatever? Like, what did you put points in? He's like, it pretty much dumped me even across the board. And I was like, that never even occurred to me.
Yeah.
To just like put like 4 points in every stat. Like
Yeah.
I want like have like 1 or 2 stats I'm really good at, and you know, at the expense of something else.
Yeah.
I feel like that always leads to kind of more interesting decisions and dynamics. Whereas like if you're mediocre at everything, like it's kind of like the game always kind of plays at a certain baseline. But if you're really good at something and really bad at something,
Yeah.
then it kind of forces you to kind of like make decisions based on that. It leads to like more interesting things. Whereas like, you know, if you're just kind of like this generalist, it's definitely useful like in a group, like especially
In a group, yeah.
You know, not to bring it back to dev, but like in creating, you want people that can kind of like pick up slack here and there. One of the things we're always kind of telling people is try to learn as much about every other skill as possible, even if that's not their forte, because just that little bit of knowledge will basically help you, and maybe even not help out directly on doing that job, but it'll at least even help you just conversing with folks that do that job, giving you the vocabulary and understanding of what they go through and how they do their work.
When you guys have to ask things of each other, you know what that means to them and you, right? Yeah, it's important.
Very important. So we started kind of playing these. We spent a lot of time building our characters 2 weeks ago. I made kind of a same kind of scenario, kind of a rogue type character in the D&D set.
Yeah, you still stuck with that.
It's something that I kind of keep going. So it's for my first delving into tabletop gaming, so I didn't want to just stray way off the path and just make something that's like not even close to familiar with me.
Right.
But to kind of bring it back around, what I noticed was like in these kind of rogue characters that I've built for myself and all these other like fantasy or role-playing games that I've played on consoles and PC in the past had all owed just insane debt to this crazy rule book that almost reads like exactly the same. Like some of the skills, like just even making the Fallout character, it's like strength, like intelligence, perception,
like, and like traps and
like all these
lock
kind of
picking,
things, like,
and
they're exact like dexterity and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like I mean,
It's
if you
just
look at
straight up.
Dragon Age or Skyrim or any of the like the major like role playing games right now, they're all basically copying right off this basic rule set that was probably set up in the 60s or 70s, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So on one hand, it was kind of exciting to see like, oh man, this is like the Bible. Like this is the thing that it all came from.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's kind of like it kind of made me sad. Like nobody's really innovated that far off of this. Is it so much that they haven't? There's no way. It's not that nobody's put an insane amount of thought into these things, because like especially just for the type of people that this type of game engages, they're very kind of thoughtful, imaginative people that. You know that people have given this an insane amount of thought, and for it to not to have mutated a whole lot kind of means that, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it scenario. Maybe like they're really onto something that's like there's really something core. There's some core competencies there that can't really be improved upon a lot. Saying that, I know that we're on like the 5th edition now.
Yeah. I
don't know what the editions mean, but that just means like this is constantly kind of evolving.
Well, there's stuff like in 3rd edition, like you can. And I think you actually kind of have to have your character go like dual class, and you can do it in 5, but like it's not really as big of a deal. Like it's not really important, and maybe even worse off than going just single class. I was reading the other day. So there's a lot of stuff like that. Just I guess basically how skills and things synergize is a big part of it.
Well, I mean, you know, those people have to iterate on this insane amounts. I mean, it's this kind of this living document, but at the same time.
Yeah.
And anytime they change it, it sounds like people have very strong opinions about which edition is best and why. And
Yeah, 3.5 seems to be like, that one keeps coming up when I'm reading about stuff. The third edition, that one seems to be like a cult favorite in a way. Yeah, so I see what you mean.
I mean, definitely. I mean, you look at certain video games, even like a lot of people give Fallout flack for changing some of the stuff they did, or even just like the new Battlefront, which is a very arcadey game. Like, people will still be like, it's not as good as Battlefront 2. I'm going to go still play that. And that's like a 15-year-old game at this point.
Yeah.
But it's kind of got this cult following, and that like it does something for them very well that they don't want to see anything different.
I think it's interesting when a game, it seems like, because when games reach that point, it's like a lot of people coming from their own place with it. I don't feel like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like this game really does have something, because it's like all these people I imagine, at least in isolation, have discovered something about it that just makes it like great to them. And when everybody's kind of doing that separately, and you get this kind of longevity, like, you know, Smash Brothers Melee, like that one's like the ultimate one, because everybody kind of sees these things, this similar, like, they see what's good in it, and they all see that thing, and that means, like, to me, it's almost like it's a lot less subjective, you know. And I don't know, I just find that really interesting when, you know, it's sort of like a interesting test to like how good a game actually is, right? Like, if it withstands time like that, because these people won't let go of it because they each individually have this tie to it, versus something that just gets come out, pushed and marketed, and kind of disappears.
Right. I mean, there's something there that scratches a certain itch. Like, I mean, the thing with Melee is like there's movement and like attacking and canceling options that are in that game that totally read like they weren't intended to be that way. Like, the people at Nintendo didn't go out of their way to like invent wave dashing and L canceling.
Yeah, they discourage it heavily too. Like, at that era was like they would shut tournaments down and stuff for Melee. They're less like that now, but yeah.
I mean, they're starting to come on board, but like there's things in the game that it wasn't necessarily designed to do, and people picked up on those things and turned it into something else. Like, it became something else in the hands of the community, and so they kind of take ownership of that and then kind of keep pushing it out. So the folks that really kind of came of age in, I guess, like the 3.5 D&D thing, where they really figured out how the rule set works. They figured out how to like shape it to their own kind of characters and the way that their friends play. I can see how that they would have this reaction against like, oh, version 4 comes out, not knowing what any of these versions mean other than numbers to me.
Right.
And they see like, oh, they totally nerfed this class that my best friend plays all the time.
Yeah.
And like my girlfriend plays this class and it's super overpowered now. And like, oh man, I hate this. Let's just go play the other one.
Yeah.
And you saw that in the Smash guys when Brawl came out.
Yeah.
They were all super excited, like, oh my god, the new thing, and they all went out and bought it. And then they were playing it, and then they were playing it, and then all they could think of was how slow it was versus Melee, how they took away all these crazy movement options that they had kind of honed over the course of years, and they eventually just said, no, we were excited, but this isn't for us, and they went back to playing this really old game at this point.
Yeah.
Well, the game that still draws, you know, we just had 100 people here just this past weekend in this room that we're sitting in playing Melee.
They were playing Melee
and Brawl and 4 and all the different Smash games. But
was like
lots of Melee folks. That was like the main event. Like, that's the one that
Melee
finishes.
still.
Melee still closes it out. Like,
Wow.
that's the one that finishes last. That's the one everybody wants to see.
That's just amazing to me. Like, really interesting.
Yeah, it's, you know, when a game hits on something and does and kind of catches that interest, it's hard for people to kind of move on from there. That said, you know, things have to grow, things have to change to hit that next piece. And kind of to bring it back to one of my point was like what kind of made me sad was like if Nintendo just made Melee and they just said, oh man, this is the pinnacle. Nothing will ever beat Melee, so we're never gonna make a Smash Brothers game again. Like, that's just the complete.
That would be awful. Yeah,
that would be awful.
There's always room for improvement. Yeah.
Right, and as much as people like bag on Brawl or like the next ones or what is it, you never want them to like not try something different. You don't want Wizards of the Coast not to make like 6th edition, you know, like 5 years from now or however long it takes them to do these. You don't want Fallout 5 to never come out or something like that.
Because it could be. I mean,
or the new Battlefront even. Like, people are super excited for it, and then they got it in their hands, and some of those devotees of Battlefront 2 are just, like, they're not going to be happy because it's not Battlefront 2, right?
Yeah.
You know, no matter what they do. But does that mean that they shouldn't have made Battlefront because people love Battlefront 2? Like, should they have not tried to make it different or do something new? Like, I would discourage that all the time. As much as people love, like, backwards compatibility in their consoles and all that, like, I've always been kind of a big proponent of, like, no, like, don't do that. Like, build the best tech you can. I mean, one of the big limiting factors on, like, the PlayStation or the Xbox 360 and some of these things was they were trying to build in backwards compatibility where I believe they shouldn't have, because it limited the console that they could build. It limited the tech. It made them kind of shoehorn in old technology and old ways of thinking into this box, which should be something new. And if they had just said, we're forget your back catalog, we're building a new system entirely, nothing old will play on it because it's just that much more advanced, and they spent everything that they could on just making it the most advanced piece of tech for the cheapest price that they could make, then you'd see a better console than you would if you're trying to do all this backwards compatibility thing. But then people come out of the woodwork and be like, I'm not buying it unless I can play my old games on it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize how many people really think that way. Like, if they can't keep their old stuff. I mean, I always thought, like, you know, if you look back at the old hard consoles like Super Nintendo or Genesis or whatever, like, you know, Nintendo 60, you can't play a Super Nintendo game on a Nintendo 64.
Object,
you can't play a Super Nintendo, and nobody, like, freaked out and said, I can't play a Super Nintendo game, so I'm not getting a 64. Like, nobody even thought that way.
Yeah.
But now people want to always keep one kind of foot in the past, so to speak. They want to be able to kind of keep bringing their stuff back. PC never has this problem. PC can kind of just, you know, it deals with different issues because
that's why I think, like, Steam machines is actually, people are really underestimating that, because I feel like that actually really makes consoles obsolete, because now you have rolling hardware, right? Like, you don't have to wait for a console release cycle ever, you know? And backwards, like you said, backwards compatibility is not a thing. And, you know, as tech and development improves, the hardware improves, and, like, that's just so much, I don't know, I just feel like it always gives people a chance to buy this new thing, you know? And so it's good for manufacturers, and people will be, you know, like I said, you don't have to wait for a huge release cycle, and you're not pigeonholed into one system anymore.
I mean, I take a certain amount of umbrage with the Steam machine model, just in the sense that it's just a PC. Like, at the end of the day, they're not doing anything other than pre-packing PCs that they're then branding and selling to people.
Right.
And it's kind of like, well, from a marketing business standpoint, I think it's genius. It's amazing. Like, it's a huge coup. You basically, this is the wrong term to use, but I feel this way just as somebody who knows how to build a PC. Is like, I feel like you tricked people into saying they're buying a console and they're just buying a PC from you that you picked all the parts for, that they could build themselves for cheaper. But the problem there is that a lot of people are just intimidated by, like, building a box, or they don't know where to look, or they don't know, and
or they don't even want to.
So on that side, like, you know, they're providing people ease of use. I mean, that's what the consoles have always kind of.
And that's the point. That's the only reason consoles really make sense right now, right?
It's the hugest thing.
Yeah.
It provides a common platform. Like, I was able to go home, turn on my Xbox last night, and my friends are on, and I can just. And they're on playing Battlefront, and in 2 minutes I'm in a game playing with them. Whereas, like, if we're on PC, like, you know, you're using other texting programs, or like, if you're not using Steam directly, you're doing all these other things to get in touch with people, and maybe they're on, maybe they're not, maybe you can't even see what they're doing, like, and maybe my computer can run Battlefront, but my friend Steve, he has a computer, but it can't run Battlefront,
right?
Or it can run it, but it's really slow, and it's not a good experience for them. So the consoles always kind of had that level playing field where everybody knows what the hardware they're dealing with is. The developers know what hardware they're dealing with is, so they know, like, exactly how fast it's going to run for everybody.
Right. And that is, and I think that's possible. And I know we talked about this before. I think that's possible within Steam machines, though. I think Steam. My guess, or what I at least think they should do, is have a sanctioned set of hardware. You know, where it's like, this is the Steam machine, this is the hardware on that, so that developers can still produce that consistent experience and really make these, like, super tight, rock solid games. But it also doesn't only, you know, they can also make something more diverse, or, you know, not make something as tight if they don't have the resources to.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's kind of what, you know, I guess what you're trying to say is that there should be like a Steam machine. There should be like one Steam machine that this is the Steam machine for the day, and that's not what they're doing, unfortunately. I mean, there's an infinite number of Steam machines. Anything that has the branding can technically be a Steam machine. I think the last time I checked, there's like 20 something that are like branded Steam machines.
Yeah, it's not at all like that.
And they range anywhere from $3,000 to like $400, and like the people who buy a $400 Steam machine are going to be woefully disappointed about what that thing can actually do.
Yeah.
Because a $400 computer is not that strong. But then you buy that Alienware $3,000 Steam machine. That's going to be a beast for like a year.
But a $300 Steam machine will, you can get a $300 computer and a
if you want to play older
hardware
stuff
can be
and
skewed
2D stuff
within a price point. So, just because you could get like a $300 computer is different because it's more general purpose, whereas a $300 Steam machine is bottom line, this thing plays games. That's all we care about, building the hardware and supporting it. So I think that a $300 Steam machine would be a lot stronger than a $300 computer.
I don't know. I'm not seeing that in the general specs that I was reading on the Steam machines. Like some of the like the $500 level Steam machines is what I would consider. Not a gaming machine. I would look at that and be like, I can't play games on that unless I was going to play like 2D stuff or like old stuff. Nobody's going to be able to buy a $300 Steam machine and fire up the new Witcher or like Skyrim and like max everything out. Like they're going to be able to play older stuff. Whereas you can buy a $300 or $400 console and you can.
Yeah.
You can play The Witcher on Xbox One, or you can play Battlefront on PS4, and it'll run fine.
But yeah, I just think that though.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I like the idea of them kind of like demystifying and kind of bringing PC gaming more to they're trying to make it more palatable for the masses, so to speak, not to come off like the PC master race nonsense.
But no, that's true. People have an aversion to PC gaming. They're intimidated by it.
Well, at a certain point they should be, because PC gaming, especially in the past, it's much better now with Steam and like digital distribution and like the way that developers have access to people.
Half-Life mod, the first Half-Life, like that was nuts. Like,
when I was a little kid and like just like trying to like play X-Wing on like a DOS machine, like you needed needed to partition memory for it. You needed you had to write your own environments, so that basically the box was basically dedicating all its available hardware to running this game. Otherwise it wouldn't even run. Like if you loaded up Windows, like Windows 3.1 or before they even did like the 90s or whatever. Like, if you loaded up like Windows and then tried to launch like X-Wing from the desktop, it wouldn't run.
You have to go
because it was too much RAM was being used up. There's only 4 mega RAM in that box.
Yeah, I was actually talking about this with Sean the other day.
So you couldn't boot to Windows. Yeah. You had to create your own custom DOS environment that relegated everything else off, basically, and just like this box will just run X-Wing, and if I turn off X-Wing, the computer's going to shut down.
Yeah.
Like basically.
Yeah.
So back then, like you really had to jump through these hoops,
aversion.
and even then you had like even in the '90s and like early 2000s when you had a PC game on like a CD and you installed it, chances of it running the first time you fired it up were, I don't know, coin toss at best.
Yeah, you had to almost always mess with the settings. You had to go in and know an OpenGL versus Direct3D and resolutions and vertical sync and all that shit. Yeah,
and then tweaking all your settings to get your optimal experience. And
for what your hardware.
You get all excited and you fire it up and you crank up all the settings, then it runs like a slideshow, and then you're like, oh, this is not the experience that I want. You had to kind of make all these kind of compromises basically in the quality of the game to get it to run as fast as you were, and then it was all just kind of like just tantalizing you with that, because it's like then you'd seen what it looked like with all the settings cranked up. You're like, oh man, I want both of these. Yeah. Whereas if you just plugged in a Nintendo 64 game and you turned it on, that's what it was. Like there was no they didn't drop this is what it would look like on high settings. And you can't do it.
Well, actually, 64 did have that with Perfect Dark and the
the booster pack was a little bit different. But it didn't necessarily change the graphics to like a high fidelity thing. It opened up a lot of options for play that weren't there before, like the main campaign and playing with bots
AI and stuff.
Playing with the bots and multiplayer you needed the booster pack for that. And those are the two best things about the game.
I wouldn't say the booster pack was successful, probably for the exact reasons we're talking about now, whereas people just don't want to mess with that shit. They want their fixed hardware. And I can see the virtue in that. Definitely as I get older, like you said, like when I come home from work at night and like, you know, I do a lot of stuff, and if I want to play a game, I need there to be like no friction. You know, like I can't sit there fucking with like operating system settings just to boot it up, and then like maybe my controller's not being recognized because it's a PS3 controller being emulated as an Xbox, you know. And like,
all right, we fight with those problems too much during the day, just trying to dev
Yeah,
stuff.
right, yeah,
Last thing I want to do is
over
go home
this,
and troubleshoot anything. So that's
Yeah.
where like the consoles for me have kind of come back. I mean,
Yeah,
I never
and
left. I never
that's
left
huge.
console gaming. Like I always had a console, but you know, I've definitely over my life done a lot of PC gaming as well. And but-
Overwhelmingly PC for me.
But mostly, like, my PC gaming has been, the majority of it has been basically, like, solo PC gaming. Like, I played a lot of, like, you know, X-Wing stuff, like, online when I was younger. I played a lot of Half-Life and Team Fortress online. And, like, those kind of games, sure, you play, like, a little bit of multiplayer. But it was always, like, me with, like, random people online. Or, like, unless it was, like, in college when we
Yeah,
played stuff.
I think it's.
But when I wanted to play with my friends, like having the set hardware of like the consoles was always the win. Like
Right.
being able to just fire it up, you know, start a party on Xbox 360, people jump in it, you jump in a game, and you just play Left 4 Dead, you know, and
Yeah.
it wasn't there. Like Left 4 Dead is probably a million times better on PC.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know because all of my friends have it on console, and
Yeah.
I want to. And the point of that game is I want to play it with them. I don't.
Yeah.
I'd never had the urge to fire up Left 4 Dead and play it by myself with 3 bots.
Yeah.
Right? I always want to play it with other people that I know. That's where the fun of that game comes from.
Yeah.
Kind of along the same lines to kind of bring this potentially full circle is the tabletop gaming experience, where a lot of these kind of big RPGs are kind of by virtue of what they are, like Skyrim or Fallout, solo experiences into kind of this wasteland. And one of the things that you've seen, and you know, MMOs aside, what you've seen is tabletop gaming never really went away, and it kind of feels like there's a big resurgence in it right now.
Definitely.
Because as immersive and crazy as those experiences are in like Skyrim and Fallout, you're experiencing them alone, and you can talk to people about it now with like Twitter and being able to just grab a GIF and throw it on Imager. Like you can share like these cool things, like hey, check out what I did, kind of thing. But it's not quite the same as playing with somebody who's right next
You know,
to you.
it's funny you mentioned that. I think about that pretty regularly, and I have like, you know, well, it's like 2 thoughts. I always like have these 2 thoughts. One is like, I realize that like my existence almost has no meaning without other people, like in life. That's really as far as I seriously go there with my mind. It's like, okay, like I did all this shit, but like it doesn't matter. So then the second thought is like I start considering like the tree falling in the woods thought experiment, and it's like I think it's a really interesting thing. It's like, okay, I have everything, I have all the gold, I have all the things, I can kill all this stuff. None of it matters because it's in isolation, you
Right.
know. And what good is it then?
I mean, that's an old freaking jam band lyrics. Like, it's not an experience unless you can take someone along.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you need to have somebody there kind of with you to kind of like make it
Yeah.
something more than it is. And that's one of the big, you know, nobody's lost sight of that. And that's one of the big pushes, especially with VR and whatnot. VR is by virtue of what it is right now in development right now. It's a very much not only is it a solo experience,
Yeah.
it's very isolating because when you put on the helmet and you put on the noise canceling headphones,
Yeah.
I can be sitting across the table from you
Yeah.
and have no awareness that you're even in the room with me. I'm on some spaceship somewhere, you know. But what people are going to see, and I think what the big boom is with VR is going to happen, is when the social experience on VR becomes ingrained in it. Like, and
Yeah.
a lot of very, very smart people are working on that specific thing right now.
And I, you know, to that point is I'm remembering the conversation we had earlier, which was about D&D in VR, but it's a tabletop experience, which I just think is like a hilarious irony, but also something I want so bad. Like I think it could be so fun.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting thing. If people don't know what that is, I mean, basically in alt space, they did a deal with Wizards of the Coast where they're running tabletop games in VR. So you have your helmet and I shouldn't call it a helmet, call it a headset, and you go online with other people, and it puts you in a little virtual avatar.
Maybe in the 80s, like imagining a VR. Yeah.
Right. Like Crossfire. And you're in a virtual, basically, tavern, But you don't leave the tavern and go exploring like an MMO like World of Warcraft. You're in the tavern playing a tabletop game in the tavern with other virtual avatars, and so people are playing Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop experience, which is very much predicated on imagination and talking and describing what's happening around you, as opposed to just like showing it to you in VR. And I think, just crystal ball moment. I mean, there's totally going to be add-ons built onto that so hard where people are going to build that virtual tabletop environment, not even just in the raw MMO thing that's probably going to come 10 years down the line, where people are going to be able to play, Sword Art Online type style, like World of Warcraft in VR type stuff, which might not even be that far out. But people will be doing like that virtual tavern thing where they will have little dragons on the table and like little crazy environments and little virtual representations. So the virtual avatar of their body sitting by the table will be there, but they will also have a virtual representation of their character, like the Star Wars like hologram chess game where they have like the little characters on the tables like doing their little actions.
Man, it'd be so. That would honestly, I can't imagine anything topping that for me. Like if I could do that with my friends and play that way. I don't think there could. I mean, I don't see myself having anything. I can't think of anything
that's
else.
It. That'll be done.
Yeah,
At that point, games are over. That's just what I do.
That's just
now.
what I will do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's definitely interesting and to see kind of like how like with the head tracking and the hand tracking coming to it and how it lends itself to even more kind of expression than just the voice chat. And like when you can look over and kind of gauge somebody's mood by how they tip their head and how they move their hands, even though it's not seeing their body, it's on like a little robot or something. It doesn't matter. Like you can kind of once you can kind of recognize the person behind the machine, right? You can recognize that it's not just a bot. It's not just a pre-programmed animation. It's not like just some emote where somebody hit a button and they start dancing like in Destiny. Like, It's like people do that and it's like, okay, like whatever. But if there was a control where you could actually see them actually dancing, you get a lot of joy out of that. Whereas like just seeing the same guy dance the same way. Oh, I guess freaking hunters dance that way. Whatever. At the third time you see it, you're like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean anything
you completely filter it out, right? Yeah.
So like the pre-programmed stuff for like the actual like kind of human interaction, and what you see also with kind of like Oculus's new toy chest kind of demo, where they built this thing that's kind of, it shows off their new touch hand controls, which tracks your hands into VR, and they basically put people in a virtual toy box, so to speak, where you get
like the Leap Motion, basically.
Kind of like that, but also even more direct tracking, kind of like the Hydra, where you can reach out and grab things and like pick up a ping pong paddle and pick up a ball and like actually like hit the ball and it bounces across the table, or you can pick up like a little virtual slingshot and reach out and grab it and pull it back and shoot it with like your two hands kind of like in VR. And they built this thing and everybody's like, that's really cool as like kind of a thing. But then what they've been demoing recently is either Palmer, one of their reps or whatever, they've been doing it socially. They've been doing it where one person goes into this toy chest and another person goes in the Oculus, and they put them in the same room together, in the same virtual room together. And so they could pick up that ping pong ball and ping pong paddle and knock it over. The other person could be holding one and hit it back and play a virtual game of ping pong. Or like they can grab like a little ball and throw it over at the other person. And like people were saying that like, the toy chest thing was cool as like a tech demo. I was like, oh, I see what's like available here. But the second there was another person being like, oh, check this out. Use the slingshot to shoot this thing over there. And the other person, they got their own thing and they're throwing like a rocket at it or whatever. And they're like, oh my God. And like then people just like, it's like kids again. Like they start playing like that just by virtue of having another person in the room who's seeing the same thing that you're seeing, who you can bounce things off of and play like little just that simple like adding another person into the room just elevates the experience. To like there's not even like a multiplier. Like it turns it into like a human experience where you're actually like engaging in this with somebody else as opposed to just poking bits and bobs in virtual space. Which ultimately feels hollow and empty sometimes when you don't have that kind of interaction.
And we got here like, talking about tabletop stuff, and it definitely supports like what I feel when I play games alone often. I mean, it's not, honestly though, like a lot of times like Fallout being alone is kind of the point, and I really do enjoy it. Like that's why I love Fallout, is it's me in the wasteland and that's it. And I love that. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, like I think that VR thing speaks to our need to, how important it is and how important it is to have other people around. And actually, I don't think it's really done enough in games. And Yeah, I think it really is the best gaming experiences you have, I've had for them often. Some of the best, at least, or a lot of the best, have been because of other people are around and I'm interacting with people.
Sure, and like you mentioned Fallout and some other games, like they're like Alien Isolation. I mean, it's right in the title. I mean, they're predicated on your character kind of being alone, and so it kind of works to have that solo experience. And solo experiences are not going away. I mean,
No.
They've always been very strong, and like some of the strongest stories you can get into and all that are predicated on kind of playing by yourself. Kind of like reading a book is not necessarily a shared experience, but it can be a very deep one if you engage with it in a certain way.
Right.
So those experiences aren't going away. It's more just that when you can bring somebody along and and play with them, like that's the thing that's going to kind of elevate everything.
Yeah, I just remembered actually for a little while when I was playing WoW, I honestly couldn't play any other games because it felt so meaningless. Because the isolation made the whole game feel like it didn't matter to me. I was like, what's the point of all this if there's nobody else around?
Level 50 in the Skyrim or whatever.
Yeah,
but
like,
nobody can see how cool my
yeah,
guy is.
exactly. And it's not ever like I played those games to be cool, but it just felt like my achievements had no weight to them or something. Like
Right.
not that I wanted to brag or show them off, but they didn't.
Well,
matter.
actually, that's one of the things that I've talked about. We've talked about this around here many times. I mean, when they announced the Elder Scrolls Online, or when they got the licenses to build Fallout Online, they're making an online experience for Fallout. Right
Oh,
now.
they finally. I thought that was like dead.
They
and
were
not
still
gonna
fighting
happen.
about it, but it sounds like the ink is dry finally. And from what I heard the last, I don't know if that's a done deal or what, but that's the last I heard is like they have the rights to do that now. And I heard those things, and I was kind of just like, no, like I don't want to play an MMO. Like I don't.
Yeah.
I want you guys to make like these really tight, like deep, immersive solo experiences, but let me bring like 2 or 3 of my friends like into my
It defeats
wasteland.
the purpose. Like that's the whole point of those games to me.
I mean, I just want to bring like 2 people in and go on like quests with them. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be in this world with a million other people. I don't want to like run quests with like 50,000 randoms online. I don't want to grind things in an MMO fashion. I want to be able to do kind of like the standard solo progression, but with 1 or 2 other people.
Yeah.
Would be the most amazing thing.
That could be cool, definitely.
But the second dev teams, especially bigger ones, start adding like the multiplayer component, the second they do that, the question is always like, well, why aren't we letting in 1,000 people? Why aren't we letting people run their own shops and build their own homes and all these kind of things?
Yeah.
Like,
And that's like
now the technical limitations are kind of falling away, and you can actually host something like that.
right.
Like you can't explain that to a marketing guy, being like,
Yeah, it's
we
like-
could monetize these people forever and like this
Yeah, we could have
ongoing world.
infinite money or a lot less, and it's just
or
like
we can just like let people have this really kind of tight, amazing experience with like 3 other people, and they might buy it for $60 and never give us another dime.
Right. Yeah. The difference in revenue from a developer standpoint, I mean, the bottom line is those guys exist to make money, right? So it makes more sense for them.
It's a hard sell. Like adding multiplayer is a huge pain in the ass, no matter how big or small it is.
Yeah.
Just making things kind of show up together online and have everything synced up across games so everybody is experiencing kind of the same thing and no people are kind of left out or things don't drop or break just because by virtue of running over the internet, which is all held together by duct tape and bubble gum.
Yeah.
Just adding that component alone is like a huge amount of man hours just to make sure that it works.
And then
So it's hard to justify that expense.
and keeping the resources ready for in case it doesn't. Like, there's actually a lot of money spent on, like just having things ready in case, and you can go a long time without any problems, but you're still paying for people and services to make sure were there a problem that it could get handled, and that stuff's not just something you can spin up. It's got to be already spinning when shit breaks, or it's not going to get fixed.
mean, when you add those multiplayer components and you make it like a prime part of the game, like WoW or like Battlefront or whatever, like when you do that and your servers go down, well then your product is dead.
It's
Like it's kind of like it doesn't work without it. Like the second you advertise that that's a feature, you've just tied yourself to delivering that continually until the game goes unsupported.
until you pull it. Yeah, I mean, and it's funny. I just remember they saw some specifically World of Warcraft like edits mean, I'm sure they probably still run it like this, but definitely at its peak, they just had like, I forget even what podcast or who was saying it, and this is meaningless, really. I don't know, but it's a good anecdote, which is that like, it basically the room where they kind of monitor all of that connectivity and server health and stuff, like it looks like a military thing in a movie. Like there's huge screens, people behind consoles, and they like run the news in case they like, so they can see like if some shit goes down, like, oh fuck, our servers are gonna get in trouble, like if there's some disaster or something. And like, you know, that's all if things are going right, you know. And yeah, that's a huge amount of support. And
They look like they're launching like nuclear missiles. It's
but
like
they're really just making sure.
We're DEFCON 1, the freaking orc village isn't loading properly.
Yeah, like all these people serious with headsets, and then cut to like a naked guy just like dancing on top of somebody he killed in like the dumbest way, and it's
How
like,
do you kill that which has
yeah,
life?
exactly, right. It's all for that.
Well, that's probably a good place to end it right now.
Got a busy weekend. We gotta get.
We got a game jam firing up here in a few hours. After we turn this mic off, we're basically walking outside, and we're going to be out in here jamming all weekend, trying to make a game to a theme in 2 days, which is a insane feat, but
Oh yeah, you
one that
said
we've
you were
done
gonna.
many times.
You were gonna tell me the theme.
You know, I could announce the theme right now because nobody's going to hear this until after the jam's over, so I could tell you right
You could
now,
tell me.
but I'm not going to.
He's gonna tell me. I'll edit it out. Just know he told me. You can't wait. You can't beat that move. He's not gonna tell me.